So welcome back, everyone. We are coming to our panel. Hello. Our final panel. We have had great presentations. Woo, yeah. Yeah. 3 days of panels and accomplishing the results of your work. And now we're going to have the last panel, but not least, green guides, tools for improving our built environment. And it will be my pleasure to present also Ashley Duncan, Taylor Schultz, Delaney Shortridge, and Brett Jelinek. And with this, I introduce Ashley Duncan.
So I'm Ashley Duncan.
I'm Taylor Schultz. I'm Delaney Shortridge.
Brett Jelinek.
Yes, and hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here to watch the Green Guidelines present. I know it's the last presentation and we're all ready to get out of here. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about our panel. We will explore how the adoption of green guidelines transforms and improves our constructed surroundings while decreasing our ecological footprint in both private and public organizations. In my project, I created and implemented a pilot program aimed at improving MCN Build's Baltimore's office waste management practices and established sustainable benchmarks that challenge the company to enhance their current initiatives.
While Ashley's project worked with MCM Build to reduce their footprint, my project addressed waste reduction and the footprint in the Gunnison County Valley. My project used case studies, literature, and research to outline different waste diversion techniques that are available for adaptation in Gunnison County for the future.
And like Taylor, I worked with a local government entity. I worked with the City of Fort Collins Xeriscape Incentive Program to reduce our water usage. And I created a guidebook for residents to use to change their landscape from a traditional grass lawn to a xeriscape landscape.
And while Delaney was working on the yards in Fort Collins, I was working on yards in the Chicago region, specifically dealing with the invasive species buckthorn and how to help homeowners deal with this nasty plant. So over the last 2 days, we've learned a lot about stewardship in our natural environments. But today we're going to be talking about some less natural environments and our built environments, which also need ecological stewardship. Over the last year, the four of us have been working to create guides for our community partners to build a greener, brighter future. Take it away, Ashley. Woo!
Okay, great. So again, hello everyone. My name is Ashley Duncan. I am a Master's of Environmental Management candidate for the year 2023 at Western Colorado University. And this is my project, Sustainable Performance Benchmarks in the Workplace. MCN Build Incorporated, our pilot program. So I'm excited to share the work I've been doing with you all over the past year with this company, building a pilot program for office waste management practices. So who is MCN Build? MCN Build excels in design, build, and construction, and they have positioned themselves as an industry leader in the DMV area. MCN supports numerous internal and external sustainable initiatives. They operate out of 3 offices, one being in Washington, D.C., where their headquarters lie, and the 2 other offices being in Maryland. Our project goal was to incorporate a program that could build upon MCN's current sustainable habits, create opportunities for information tracking, and have universal qualities for program expansion. As we developed our project scope, we decided to create a pilot program that enhanced upon their current office waste management practices. Our intention was to implement this program at the Baltimore office because of its project feasibility. It had a smaller office and we were able to amend certain qualities if necessary. So during this presentation, we will take a deep dive into the Waste Resource Action Plan that I created and implemented in order to instill benchmarks for this program. Additionally, I will share the outcomes, my results, and the recommendations I have for this company. In order to carry out this program, I did have to use this Waste Resource Action Plan. So what is a Waste Resource Action Plan? A Waste Resource Action Plan establishes a baseline of waste management practices and identifies opportunities for sustainable improvement within their waste management. With this plan, I was able to do just that, establish the Baltimore's office's baseline waste management and create sustainable benchmarks for the company that were attainable. So how did I do this? It's important to understand what the company is currently doing in terms of the foundation for waste management practices. So to establish this rapport, I performed a walkthrough. So the walkthrough was crucial for me to identify the current practices and procedures. The walkthrough evaluated the facility's operations, the waste generated, how it was generated, and the type. The office currently has an open floor plan, as you can see in the third picture, and utilizes a single stream recycling system. They have 2 designated recycling areas, and their highest volume of waste was located in the common area in the kitchen. The table above in the observation table, the first picture, highlights some of the observations I made. And here is just an example of some research I did on how to conduct a conclusive waste audit with the proper protocols and procedures. So during the waste audit, I performed a 1-week waste audit where I collected the week's worth of trash. I separated it by waste stream, diversion potential, and bin location. There were a total of 9 bins, while 6 bins were only in regular use. The garbage was collected and weighed separately from the recycling waste in order for me to establish the office's baseline diversion rates and the baseline landfill rates. Upon reviewing this data, the audit data, I developed a waste diversion tool in Excel, and I used this to have conclusive results on the exact percentage MCN was diverting waste at. Surprisingly, they diverted 71%, which is really great, while 28 to 29% was going to landfill. Their largest waste stream contributor was paper, while cardboard and organic waste was their second and third. This can be seen in the 2 pie graphs above. So from this 28 to 29%, I broke it down just a little bit further in order to understand MCN's full potential for waste diversion efforts and where they can improve in their waste management practices. In this 29%, the largest contributor was organic waste at 33%, while 25% was plastic and 21% was paper. After a comprehensive analysis, I concluded that MCN had the total potential to reach a 93 diversion rate if they implemented successful diversion methods. This means that there was a 20% increase available for them to improve their waste diversion efforts. This is really important to acknowledge because Washington, D.C. and Maryland are both initiating zero waste campaigns. They are piloting waste diversion programs through recycling, curbside composting, and waste reduction methods, while also enacting compliance and regulation methods for residential and commercial waste. This is a great opportunity for MCN to prepare for an evolving waste infrastructure and avoid any compliance and regulations issues. So after, gathering all my findings and my results, I communicated with my project partner, and we were looking for the most opportune course of action for the company to pursue. So we wanted to create a plan that required minimal upkeep, didn't interfere with professional operations, and was easily achievable by employees on a subconscious level. We decided to go after an 81% diversion target goal, and we believe that an organic waste system was the best way to achieve this. The organic waste was the largest contributor of the landfill waste, and it was the only waste stream that didn't have a proper disposal method. This alternative management practice was definitely surprising for me in terms of how we define office sustainability for construction industry and where we can find offsets. Yeah, so we took some time to, we took some, 1 second. There we go. In order to achieve this goal, we devised an extensive vendor research. So we had a few requirements that were necessary to adhere to our needs. This catapulted me going on to creating a tier categorization system where I compared companies based on our requirements. I was then able to narrow it down to 5 companies where our project partner decided to go with Compost Cab. Compost Cab was a DC Sustainability Award winner for composting, and they operated in both Maryland and DC, which meant that if our program were to extend, we had the potential to stay with our vendor. They also can provide digestible, accessible data, which means that it wasn't just a whole bunch of numbers on the data of the waste that they were collecting, but we were able to digest it into marketing strategies. They also provided discrete door service and educational materials such as flyers and in-depth trainings. This was exactly the all-inclusive package we were looking for in the vendor service for a low maintenance program. So it took us some time to get our program approved from upper management, but we finally did. And when we did, implementation and onboarding process was super seamless. Compost Cab was able to provide an in-depth training on the do's and don'ts of their composting regulations. We also received a customizable educational flyer that's in the corner on your left, which was a huge help in establishing that subconscious level of our new protocol for composting in the office. Our vendor has been in service officially for 3.5 weeks to a month, and we received our first report. We are trending towards our 81% goal for diversion. We have met or exceeded our 4 to 5 pounds of organic waste each week. And here is an example of some of the digestible data that Compost Cab was able to provide. So they take what you do and they translate it into your savings or your emission savings or what it equivalates to. In a 1-year snapshot, MCN will have diverted 513 kilograms of organic waste from the landfill. This is important just because it releases the burden on our overflowed landfills. It also reduces the amount of GHG emissions being produced, such as methane. Methane is commonly produced through anaerobic decomposition, which happens during organic waste. This alternative management practice reduces MCN's total office's end of life cycle by 136.83 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. This is equivalent to removing 3,832 pounds of burned coal. So, like I said, MCN still has a ways to go in terms of office waste management, but we are trending towards this goal. I will be providing MCN with this waste resource action plan that they are able to use at their leisure for expansion. In this program, I highlight numerous opportunities for their next steps and what they can do to improve upon their green initiatives. Here are a few of the ones I highlighted today. I asked that MCN consider forming a green team or having a green representative at each office. This can build capacity for green initiatives to be easily implemented at a faster rate. I also recommend that MCN begin purchasing remanufactured products for their most used items, such as paper. This can reduce their total life cycle or their office's total life cycle emissions. In addition to that, I think that MCN should use this waste resource action plan to expand to their other 2 offices. With expansion, they have the opportunity to apply to Washington, D.C.'s District Sustainability Award for their research and development on waste diversion for the program. It also is a great marketing strategy that they can use to brand themselves as a leader in the construction industry with sustainable measures. I would like to give a special thanks to MCN Build and the company for this opportunity. It has done wonders for my professional development and has only established that I would love to stay in the sustainability sector. A special thanks to Kilante, who showed me this opportunity, to Lisa Anders, who approved my project and listened, and to Sabrina Moros, who was there every step of the way, being my biggest advocate, helping me through the project. Dr. Vasquez, who listened to every changing project scope I developed, the MEM program, my friends, my family, and anyone who's entertained my project pitch. Thank you.
For Ashley.
What do you think was the most helpful piece for creating buy-in for the people that you were working with? Was it education or conversations or?
I think what was the most helpful piece in creating buy-in for this project? I would say believing in yourself, because private companies operate by their own agenda and they have their own reasons for going along with the project or not going along with the project. I think if you can pivot with their mission and their vision, then they're willing to work with you. I didn't stop pivoting, and I think that's why they wanted to get through the program and establish some type of sustainable initiative for themselves moving forward. And then Sydney.
Two questions. But does your company have the same, I guess, goals for inside the office recycling as they do like on the site recycling? And do you think you could use your methodology to improve their on-site waste management?
Yeah, so does the company have the same methods for their waste management practices, both internally and externally on their site, their practices? And could we use this action plan to improve that waste management system? So as a construction company, they abide by all, sustainable initiatives that are required. I do know that they take an extra step to document their waste initiatives. As I followed my project partner, Sabrina Moros, who's a PMP lead, we did walk through and I did see the scorecard that she used regularly to assess this. One thing I did skip over is that the offices operate uniquely, not only in practices and location, but just differently. So this program was aimed at making it as low maintenance as possible and being universal in terms of anyone can do it. I don't know if they would use this action plan to perform external waste management practices because they already abide by what they do. And I think that because it is a private company, they have limitations on what they will and will not show. And that was one of the boundaries I ran up against. Yeah.
Congratulations, Ashley.
I will be introducing Taylor, who will be talking about waste diversion on a public municipality scale.
Again, to introduce myself, I'm Taylor Schultz. I'm an MEM in the Sustainable and Resilient Communities track. And I will be talking about my project where I did a review of waste management and recycling techniques for the Valley and provided possible waste diversion strategies for municipal solid waste and recycling within the Valley. So all of this research was kind of guided by three main questions of how much waste is created annually, how much does it cost to manage, and what practices could be implemented for better waste management going forward. My methods of this was data was collected from stakeholders that were willing to give me information and input it into a spreadsheet. And from this, calculations were made. If some information was unavailable for cost, $56 per ton was assumed for landfill tipping charges based off that year. And then all tonnage conversions was based off of information provided from stakeholders. So why explore other options? So MSW landfills are the third largest source of human-related methane emissions in the U.S., account for 14.5% of emissions in 2020, as well as they are approximately equivalent to the greenhouse gas emissions of 20.3 million passenger cars for 1 year. And additionally, the cost. Adding or constructing a new landfill is costly, and it can range anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 per acre, depending on the region. So because of Gunnison's unique location in the valley, it could be even more costly. And then as well as a global scale of waste management, we're expected to reach 3.4 billion tons of trash by 2050. And this just puts into perspective that there will be more plastic than fish in the world's oceans by 2050 if trends continue to increase. On a state level, Colorado buried over 5.9 million tons of trash in the landfill in 2020, and the state is half the recycling average of 32%. The state now averages between 15 to 16% for recycling diversion rates. So what does this mean for the Valley? Current Valley MSW and recycling management, this is all the wonderful stakeholders that were involved in this process. It describes if they're managed individually, if they hire out other contractors, and there's just little collaboration across the Valley of where waste is going, where it's managed, and what's being implemented. From my data, it is excluded from the town of Mount Crested Butte and CBMR. I just wasn't able to get any response from them in their busy tourist season, which is understandable. So from the data that was provided, I was provided with decades of information, which was incredible. But the only year of full overlap was 2021. So from this data, we have total estimated costs annually from every stakeholder, and then estimated tons as well for recycling and MSW. Western, I was unable to get the 2021 recycling data just because there were some issues with that. But estimated that is a total of $2.6 million for 2021 to manage 30,870 tons of materials. And this got me thinking of what can be better implemented with $2.6 million. It's a lot of money, and it's a lot of money if that's just being buried in the ground every year, or recycling diversion as well. But what methods can be implemented to better increase management going forward? Potential options I outlined for stakeholders included going single stream, putting it all in one bin. You never have to think about it. It sounds like a great solution. But there are some issues with that. I also outlined pay-as-you-throw programs, compost on a commercial and a residential community-based level. It's inherent that there needs to be greater collaboration across the county between all stakeholders and all entities for any of these solutions to work. On the facility level, I also looked at materials recovery facilities. For the rest of the presentation, I'll call that a MRF. And then incineration of waste to energy facilities. So now I'm just going to kind of outline some of the case studies that I provided. The first case study is pay-as-you-throw. This is implemented in Fraser, Colorado. Pay-as-you-throw means you only pay for what you create instead of you paying for a monthly trash bill or an annual trash bill. So Fraser, for their teeny tiny population of 1,420 people, they charge per yellow 40-gallon trash bag. So residents can pick these up at grocery stores, hardware stores around town and pay $8.50 for their trash bags. And then the town encourages residents to take their own trash to their recycling and waste management facility to avoid paying for additional fees. This means residents that if you only create one bag of trash, you only pay $8.50 a week for that bag of trash. Reducing that To encourage their diversion, they also have single stream recycling available at no charge for residential and household use. Again, encouraging that decrease of MSW and increased diversion. Next up is composting. I chose the Mesa County Organic Composting Facility. They created this facility with the goals of improving the air quality by providing alternative to burning waste. They didn't want to have a waste to energy facility. They also wanted to extend the life of their landfill by removing organic waste and just having that longevity of their landfill. And then this creates a valuable soil amendment, which the profits of sale can then be used to profit the facility. So kind of just creating that life cycle of a facility. Next up is waste to energy. This is in Lebanon, Tennessee. They serve an estimated population of 40,888 people. This facility does not actually burn MSW, but they convert 64 tons of wood waste, scrap tires, and biosolids per day into syngas, which is just the fuel that is created from burning biosolids, which is then used to produce 1.8 kilowatts of electricity annually. This $4.5 million gasification plant is located on the city's wastewater treatment plant kind of location. So they actually use all energy created from this facility to offset the costs for 1/3 of their annual electricity bill for the wastewater treatment plant. And then thanks to Matthew and Jod, this facility uniquely produces biochar as a byproduct of the burning process. So thanks for introducing kind of the benefits of that and what a plant that produces biochar could have in a community like this. And then the Emmett County, Michigan MRF, they have a recycling facility that reaches 30,000 people in rural Emmett County, Michigan. They're kind of in the peninsula of the state. And they had issues just having residents be interested in recycling with their program prior to 2021. And they implemented a single stream facility in 2021, and they recovered more than 40% of the waste stream and had a revenue of $2.48 million. They had this revenue by moving more than 60 material types to 27 different material manufacturers and extending that product life cycle after recycling, and just creating a more circular economy. This facility was funded by state grants and now is funded entirely by the recycling fees paid by residents. I chose this case study to look at because similar to Gunnison County, they have a cyclical tourism season and also issues with worker shortages. So they have 3 AMP Cortex artificial intelligence robots to help with all of the material sorting on their main conveyor lines. They sort out PET, HDPE, cartons, aluminum, just any of that initial sorting that would be done by human labor. They couldn't keep those humans, so they implemented a robot to do it. So just kind of a great example of a facility that can run without that need of intensive manual labor. And all of these options, we're talking about a lot of money. So just kind of what tools can be used to kind of help explore these. The EPA for pay-as-you-throw has a evaluation tool and toolkit. Municipalities and entities can enter in all of their information into this calculator, and it's designed to help community waste managers decide whether if the unit-based pricing is right for the town or the community. And then for waste to energy, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and RAIL provides U.S. local governments with technical assistance to advance waste to energy technologies. They provide grants, webinars, any information on if this would be a benefit to the community as well. And then for composting, the USDA has the cooperative agreements for compost and food waste reduction. This is a grant that assists local and municipal governments with products that develop and test if compost programs would be right for your community. Now into kind of recommendations. So for community-based, off of all this research, my community-based solution first up is pay-as-you-throw. This incentivizes residents to create less waste that goes to the landfill. Everyone wants to save money. Everyone wants to pay less. I know I want to pay less on my trash bill every month. And then it is endorsed through the EPA as an effective solution for waste reduction and has the potential to increase recycling diversion. Some of you may be thinking, what are the barriers with local haulers? That would obviously need to be kind of in discussion with Waste Management and Golden Eagle and any of the entities across the valley if this is a viable solution. And then does this increase illegal dumping because you want to pay less, you want to put less in your weekly bin? The EPA has kind of outlined that if there are recycling diversion techniques and composting, then people are willing to take that extra effort to recycle and compost and reduce waste all in one. Which leads to my next community-based solution of community composting. Kind of in that, it's a great way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the landfill. Only 5% of materials are ever composted that can be composted. And organic materials in the compost create an excessive amount of greenhouse gas emissions. So reducing that would be a great alternative. A small-scale approach would be to partner with local farms such as Calder Farms, Mountain Roots, Gunny Gardens to have drop-off facilities and be able to sell a soil amendment back to the community. A potential partnership could also be with Western to utilize the rocket composter, and if that's an option for the community. And then a facility-based solution would be a MRF. This would better meet the needs of the community for recycling. You could go single or dual stream and just create a less community-intensive approach, no more 7 bins weekly on the curb or taking it to a recycling center. And a small facility for construction costs anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million. Still a lot of money, but if it creates a larger revenue and more diversion, can that $2.6 million be better allocated with these funds? And then finally, just a tremendous thank you to everyone involved in the process. Without you all, my work would not have been possible. Everyone from Western, City of Gunnison, Town of Crested Butte, Sustainable CB, Gunnison Valley Health, and Gunnison County. Everyone provided me with great data that I was able to turn into a project, as well as my community sponsor mentor, Dr. Taryn Mead, who's thankfully here today. Her mentorship through this program has been amazing, as well as my faculty advisor, MJ Pickett. And I can now take 2 questions. Butch?
Yes. Have you looked at the application of plasma arc for municipal waste, particularly in Europe? It's done very well. And it may be something, and it generates electricity for the communities.
Yeah. So Butch's question was if I addressed plasma arc in any capacity, because it's widely used in Europe. And I did look at it in a way with waste to energy and just kind of using plasma arc or different technologies to reduce waste in the landfill. But ultimately, my kind of reading on it was public perception is a huge reason why it's not more widely accessible. It just is a large infrastructure in the county, and there's a lot of kind of NIMBY approach with it of like not in my backyard, not in my neighborhood, just kind of opposition. So I didn't really outline it as a solution here, but I did look into it. Matthew.
Well, great work, great presentation. What was something that was really surprising in a good way that you came across during your project?
Yeah, I would say the community, the collaboration, I expected it to be kind of hard to get people willing to participate in kind of trash. Like the way I perceive trash is kind of, it's a closed doors operation. You have to be in the know to get information. So everyone was really willing to kind of have roundtable discussions, emails, conversations about all of this. And just like that, it's a lot of money, but everyone was kind of really receptive to me doing the research and me outlining some potential options. So that was a surprising benefit of it. And now we have Delaney talking about water conservation.
So I did my project in City of Fort Collins. My project was water-wise landscaping for Colorado Front Range. And I worked directly with the City of Fort Collins Zero-Scape Incentive Program. So first off, some basics. What is Zero-Scape? It's a style of landscaping that takes out the traditional grass that you see that uses a lot of water and puts in other things like rock and mulch and native plants to reduce the amount of water that's needed. It also reduces the amount of maintenance that is required, which is a huge incentive for people because they don't want to go out and spend hours on their yard. And then I focused a lot on native plants in my project. So native plants are any plant that is native to that region. They grew there without humans introducing them. And so why is this important? So this is a map of Colorado from April 18th of the drought conditions on that day. So the outlined county is Larimer County, which is where City of Fort Collins is located. On that day, there wasn't a drought risk. I think it was raining that day actually. But if you see everywhere else, there is a lot of drought, especially down in southeast Colorado, there's huge drought conditions. So that's another reason I picked this, because we are in a drought and we have been for a few years and probably will continue to be. So then this is a graph showing the annual precipitation for Colorado from 1895 to 2020. The dots show each year. The bars are 5-year average, and the line is the long-term average for the entire graph, which is about 18 inches of precipitation. So that last dot over there is 2020. If you guys were in Colorado, you remember that was a really bad fire year where you had that historic fire, the Cameron Peak fire, that burned all summer and destroyed a lot of area. And then bringing it back to a more individual level, this is the average household water usage. And as you can see, 50% of that goes to outdoor use, which includes your landscaping and a pool if you have one. But seeing that number really encouraged me to work on landscaping because it's an easy way to stop some water usage. It's a lot easier than ripping up some pipe in a house. So Zero-Scape Incentive Program is a program that the city has put in place to offer a monetary incentive to convince people to switch their yards. That's split up into 2 different groups, residential and commercial. For residential, this is your home and your rental properties. You can receive 75 cents per square foot up to 1,000 square feet per approved project per address. So if you own your house and say 2 rentals, you can do it 3 times and get that money back 3 times. There's also a native bonus rebate. So if you put native plants in your yard, you can get an additional 25 cents back per square foot, up to 1,000 square feet. And you have to put a 50% coverage. So you can't put 2 plants and call it good and get that money back. You have to have more than that. And then for commercial, you can receive up to $1.50 per square foot, converted up to $15,000 per project. I worked directly with Katie Collins, who is the Senior Water Conservation Specialist for the city. And I worked with her to create a guidebook for homeowners that they can use to implement their own projects instead of paying someone, because it can be quite pricey. And this book also included a local resource list, which included a native plants list, as well as local places you can go to rent equipment, buy a shovel, and get native plants within town. I also created a brochure that she can use to introduce the program to people, because I don't know how many people know about it, but I didn't until I started researching Zero-Scape in Fort Collins. So this is a good way to introduce it to more people. So more about the program. It's been in place since 2016. She was nice enough to provide me with this chart that shows a lot of information. Has the number of projects completed, the amount of people enrolled. So that number is larger because they might not have gotten their project approved and finished in time. Their goal, how many square feet were converted, average project size, the amount that utilities paid back that year, the annual cost, this amount saved, and then what I focused on was the amount of gallons saved that year. So then I did some math for us. Between 2016 and 2020, 390 residential projects had been completed. 462,000 square feet converted, and 2.7 million gallons of water have been saved. So for my work, I started out by working with a local landscape company to implement a xeriscape project. I didn't feel I could write this guidebook without doing an actual project. So I found a company that was willing to let me work with them for a couple of days to implement this project. And I did some research about native plants with that company. The individual I was working with had gotten his master's from CSU in native plants. So it was really interesting to just talk to him for a couple of days about the importance and how easy it is to implement them in your yard. And then I worked with Katie to find areas of missing information because the City of Fort Collins website has a lot of information on it, but it's very hard to navigate. So providing a guidebook that has information and that brochure was a good way to easily hand it out to residents that don't necessarily want to spend hours on the website. So then, like I said, I've focused on native plants, and here are some of the main benefits that I found. They're very low maintenance. Once established, you really don't have to do much. You don't have to water them. They will also fight off weeds because they are native to that area, and they will work with the other native plants around them to fight off the invasive weeds. They're pretty. That's a big thing for a lot of people in introducing landscapes. They want their front yard to look good, so native plants like those have really nice flowers. They're a lot healthier for people. A traditional grass lawn, you tend to fertilize. And to fertilize, you have to either water or it has to rain afterwards. And then that water is washed into the storm gutter and into the rivers. And I worked firsthand with stormwater and saw how that affected the rivers. We saw a lot of dead fish and a lot of algae growing that shouldn't have been there. So it's just healthier for you, your kids, your plants, and the environment in general to not have grass. It also conserves water. Native plants, once they're established, you don't really need to water. They just work with what precipitation we get. So that'll save people water and money. And then for wildlife, native plants provide nectar for pollinators, such as hummingbirds, bees, and butterflies. They also provide shelter because a lot of people forget native plants are also trees and shrubs, so animals can live in them. And many offer nuts, seeds, and fruits that the wildlife can eat, but we can also eat some of them, so that's an additional benefit. So this is the list of native plants that I provided to Katie to put in the guidebook. And then I included some pictures because I know that's a really small font. I don't know if you guys can read that. But it provides their common name, scientific name, how big they'll get, how much water, what sun exposure they need, if they have flowers, what color, when they'll bloom, and if it benefits any wildlife. So then here's some examples of my guidebook. That is the cover, and I included a table of contents so you could see what I included in there. Then I spent a majority of my time in the guidebook creating that table that shows all of the tools that you might need for your project. It includes shovels, rakes, machinery that you might need, drip systems, anything like that. So I made it easy that it shows you the name, what they can be used for, and it has an image. So if you take that guidebook with you to like Home Depot and say, I need a sharpshooter shovel, you know what it looks like. And if you tell someone you have the name, it's not like you're trying to describe it. It's about this tall and long. It's hard to describe that to someone. They might not know what you're talking about. And then finally, I want to acknowledge Katie Collins. She took me on as a master's student at the same time as she was taking over 2 positions. So she was handling a lot at that time, and I appreciate her taking me on as a student and helping me learn about xeriscape. And then Dr. Michael Russell, who was my mentor and has helped me along the way and helped me change my project at the beginning and get started onto something that I liked a little bit more. And of course, my friends and family who supported me through this entire process. Leah.
I was just curious, like, I know that you focused, mainly on water saved, but it sounds like you looked a lot into native plants. And I'm curious if there's room to expand upon this project in the future by helping homes actually build like a full-on like pollinator garden or something like that.
I would say yes. Because of this project, I actually built a bee garden in my parents' backyard. Because researching native plants, it really just got me into it. I'm like, "Oh, I want to plant some. So I did. So I definitely see room. The question was to expand this to like pollinator gardens. So I definitely see room for it. It would be very interesting. Some of the residents in Fort Collins are kind of hesitant to that. We have a lot of wasps. We get more of those than bees. So I have a feeling that there would be some issues with that. So I didn't look into it so much, but I feel like you definitely could, especially with like the talk of bees are dying off and we need them to survive. So I think you definitely could. Taryn?
Is there any talk on the Front Range yet of water restrictions in landscaping that might drive more of this from a regulatory perspective?
So her question was if there are any water restriction things on the Front Range. I'm not completely sure about Fort Collins because I don't live there anymore. So I haven't seen anything, but I do know other places are implementing them. City of Brighton has one. They reduce, it's based on your address, what days you can water and what times you can water. I know it's been talk in City of Fort Collins. They have increased water prices quite a bit to try and reduce people from watering, but I'm not sure if there's like a specific water restriction set in place right now, but it has been talked about.
We are going to have more time at the end of the panel. Thank you.
I'm going to hand it off to Brett to talk about buckthorn in Chicago.
All right, let's all take a deep breath. I want to thank everyone for attending our panel. And for those of you who made it all the way to my presentation, this is the finish line. So thank you. So I worked to develop a tool for homeowners to remove an invasive species called buckthorn from their properties. But before we really get into the project, I want to tell you a story. When I was a kid, I loved to play in the woods. I'm probably not the only one here. I grew up in the suburbs of Seattle in an area that was still semi-rural. There were farms and forests mixed in between the suburban neighborhoods. And I loved to go play out in the woods, build forts, climb trees. I want everyone in the audience to just close your eyes, maybe think of a similar memory when you were connecting to nature. Maybe you were a kid, maybe it was last week, last year. Okay, you can open your eyes now and raise your hand if you have one of those memories. All right, we're in good company. So I want you to look at these two photos up here and think about the forest from your memories. And looking at these photos, the image on I need to orient myself. I'm like, my left is your right, all right? So the image on right here, it's very green, right? It's lush, but it's a thicket. There is no way you're gonna let your kids play in there. The image on the other side is, it's the same place, cleared of buckthorn. This is a buckthorn thicket. You could see yourself running around there. And since the thicket was just cleared, you don't have a lot of the native plants, the grasses and forbs coming in the ground yet. But that's a place where you could run around, have some fun, let your imagination grow. And so the point of this is that invasive species, they're bad for the environment. They limit biodiversity, they exacerbate climate change, but they also limit our ability to connect with nature, and from our children to us as adults. So next slide, please. I worked with an organization called the Chicago Region Trees Initiative. They are a 200-member network in the 7-county Chicago metro region. And they kind of came out of the 2010 tree census. It was the first of its kind for the region, and counting the trees. And there was another tree census done that CRTI worked on in 2020. You can see this graph here. I'm just going to walk right in the middle. You notice anything that sticks out a little bit, literally? The dark lines here are from the 2010 census, and the green lines are from the 2020 census. And invasive buckthorn is the culprit there. In 2010, it made up 28% of the stems counted in the region's forest and increased to 36% a decade later. So this is a problem and it's getting worse. CRTI is working on this problem and I would join them in that efforts. So what is buckthorn? The two species of buckthorn I'm talking about are European or common buckthorn, as well as glossy buckthorn. They were brought to the continent in the 1800s by European settlers to use as hedgerows. The problem with buckthorn is that it can outcompete just about any native plant. It leaves out before most native plants in the spring and holds its leaves into November and has a photosynthetic advantage. It grows into thickets, creating shade on the ground, also preventing plants from growing, and it's allelopathic, releasing toxins into the ground, preventing plants from growing. To make it worse, it's really hard to kill. If you just chop it down, it's going to grow back faster. It's going to grow back with multiple stems. Even if you use herbicide, you have to use the right herbicide. The icing on the cake is it produces a lot of berries and they might look delicious. The birds definitely think so. They eat the berries and the berries are diuretic. And so they spread these seeds far and wide and they can be viable in the soil for up to 7 years. So nasty problem, right? But we know what to do. Public land managers are addressing this problem on public lands throughout the region. The problem is most of the land in the Chicago area is private. And so I saw this as a potential opportunity for my project. I wasn't exactly sure where I would take this, but I had the opportunity to join CRTI's GIS specialists to do some ground truthing of buckthorn data. They're working on creating a high resolution mapping of buckthorn. While my project didn't relate to that directly, it did get me in the field. I got to see the worst of the worst, monoculture thickets. I got stabbed, you know, it's nasty stuff. But then I also got to see places like this photo that I took where buckthorn had been removed and natural systems were restored through proper stewardship. So that gave me motivation. I did a literature review. I read everything I could on how to remove buckthorn. And what I found is either too technical or incomplete. There wasn't material out there for the average person, a homeowner, let's say, to say, I want to get rid of buckthorn and be able to successfully carry that out. So the next step I took was interviewing invasive species experts, seasoned land managers, volunteer stewards, and learning what the best practices for the region are. And that was invaluable. But I wanted to figure out how to apply this knowledge with homeowners. And so I surveyed homeowners and I wanted to find out what were their motivations for wanting to get rid of buckthorn and what were their main barriers. So with all this data, my project did come into sharp focus. About 70% of the plantable land in the Chicago region is residential. So this was an obvious and strategic area for me to focus. I wanted to take all the research that I had done and focus it into a tool, a decision tree, to take this complex issue and simplify it. I wanted to make a step-by-step guide with best practices to turning the best practices into simple, actionable steps. The whole theme is minimizing the barriers to action while maximizing the success of dealing with this nasty plant. So I'm still working on the decision trees, but I just wanted to show you this is a complex series of decisions that need to be made. I ended up creating 4 decision trees based on the scale of the infestation on the property, from seedlings all the way up to large thicket infestations. The thing that every decision tree has in common are it starts with plant ID. You need to know that you're actually dealing with buckthorn. Then there's planning. Is this a DIY project? Are you going to hire contractors? Do you want to work with conservation groups? How are you going to dispose of your buckthorn after you remove it? Then the removal process. The decision tree will help homeowners identify what the best method for their specific circumstances are, the tools they'll need to use, the herbicide they may need to use, and how detailed instructions on how to do all of that. Following that is recommendations on native plants to replace the native buckthorn. This both the invasive buckthorn. This both reduces the chance of buckthorn coming back, as well as restores ecosystem function. And finally, you remember how I said the seeds can stick around in the soil for 7 years, and how when you cut it down, it can grow right back. The decision tree also deals with monitoring and follow-up treatment, because removing buckthorn is not a one-time process, not a one-time step, but a multi-year process. And I'll be wrapping up these decision trees up for my community sponsor in the next month. It will also feature a key that will have all the detailed text, images, videos, photos, links to buy the tools, buy the herbicide, contractors with experience around buckthorn that you can hire. Like I said, it's all to make it as easy as possible and maximize success. So I might be wrapping up soon, but CRTI is going to take this project and bring it to the public. So I have laid out some next steps for them. One of them, the original vision for this project was that it would be the basis for a web app, something that you could just pull up on your phone out in your yard. You're like, do I have buckthorn? Sure do. How bad is it? Okay, what do I need to do? So I hope that they will be able to pursue that. There's also potential to expand to different geographic regions. Buckthorn is found in 36 states, particularly the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes Basin. It could also include other native or invasive plants, especially woody invasive plants, because the management techniques for them are pretty similar. Could also include other user groups in addition to homeowners, such as professional landscapers, homeowner associations, etc. Could also link up to environmental justice organizations. Invasive species management could be linked to work happening there to improve the environment. We'll skip over the challenges. We don't like challenges because I have some people to thank. So next step, I want to thank Trinity Pierce and Melissa Kustik at Chicago Region Trees Initiative. They are my community sponsors and they've been on this journey with me, so thank you. Dr. Micah Russell, my mentor, appreciate all the support from you. I want to especially thank my wife, Erin, who's back there. I literally could not have done this project without her support and especially her patience. I want to thank my daughters, Flora, who was born 2 months before I started this program, and my second daughter, Arlene, who was born 7 months ago, right in the middle of this project. So they are just as much a part of this project as anything. I want to thank Matt and Brett at Lake County Forest Preserves, Lindsay at CRTI, Brandon at Bolt Bison, Trisha and Spencer at the Morton Arboretum. Their support really made this project possible. Any questions? And I can talk about some of those challenges. I just wanted to get in 12 minutes.
Yes.
Sorry.
I'd love to hear about your challenges and if you ran into any homeowners that are like, no, I love my buckthorn. I don't want to remove it.
Yeah, so the question is, what were some of the challenges that I face, and did I encounter anyone who loves their buckthorn and doesn't want to get rid of it? The challenges that I had on the slide that I didn't talk about are that Illinois is an incredibly bureaucratic state. It has 7,000 local units of government. And so dealing with all the permits and regulations and everything as far as noxious weeds, removing trees, getting a burning permit, it is actually a real barrier, even if you know what to do, finding out what your local laws are and what you can do in that regard. Another one was that I call herbicide hesitancy, people who don't want to use herbicides for one reason or another. And I think there are good reasons for this hesitancy, but with buckthorn, it really is the most effective way to eradicate it. And proper use of herbicide, which I teach through the decision tree, has almost minimal impact on the environment, especially compared to buckthorn that isn't dealt with. And then also, last one, let's talk politics tonight at the reception. Regarding your question about people who don't want to get rid of their buckthorn, yes, that is an issue. It was brought here to form hedgerows. It's a really nice privacy screen, and people that live in suburbs where they have big property and big houses and want their privacy, kind of like the buckthorn. And so public land managers are actually, they recognize the problem that private landowners need to be dealing with their buckthorn. And so they've started doing this work. They've done some research. And so part of my homeowner survey was identifying people's motivation so that you can use that for further outreach. The decision tree also includes plant recommendations for using native plants to create privacy screen hedgerows.
Congratulations. We can. Questions for the whole panel, please.
I'd love to ask all of you about scalability. I think for each of you, it's a little bit different. So I think like for Ashley, I would ask you like, how scalable is this? Or having gone through it in this like hands-on way, how would you see it being done in the next iteration or 10 iterations later? And Brett, I think it would be a bit different for you. So I'm interested to hear all of your thoughts on scalability.
All right, I'm being asked to start. Repeating the question, scalability, how can these projects be expanded and brought into a bigger context? I do think that because the buckthorn problem is wide ranging, especially in the northern Midwest states, I think this project could be scaled up, could bring in partners from many places and enhance this tool so that it can be used as many places as buckthorn finds it.
And I think my project could be expanded to pretty much anywhere. We're not the only state that's in drought conditions, and we're not going to be the only state. It's going to continue. And this could easily be expanded to larger cities or even smaller places like Gunnison. That guidebook gets handed out and the resources that just get changed. It's very easy to hand it off to other areas.
And as for me, like scalability, Gunnison actually was kind of the outlier. I had to reduce the scale and look for way smaller solutions that could be applicable here. And for waste management, a lot of the technologies are for huge cities and huge populations. So my research could definitely be implemented and kind of looked at in other small towns and small regions, but the technologies and the information definitely already exists for larger scales.
Yeah, for my pilot program, I actually made it so that it was scalable to the other offices. With the office that I did start with, it was smaller in size and employees, and we made the pilot program with the intention of engaging with the other offices who had way more employees at like 20 plus numbers. The Waste Resource Action Plan is also able to be implemented at other institutions. I don't want to say it's generic, but it's definitely a step-by-step guide on how to assess what's going on with your waste management practices, identify areas in room for improvement, and sustainability, whatever it is that you're looking for the company. Yeah, Sean?
So with all of your projects in kind of their own unique ways, you all kind of challenged the status quo a little bit of things. And I was just curious if you all could kind of talk about a bit of your process for finding support with what you were doing. Were there challenges in some areas?
Yeah, so Sean is asking about challenging the status quo and finding support for your project and your ideas and how you were able to get this basically implemented. For me personally, I think Leah asked this question earlier, and I said that it was what's inside of you and like believing in yourself. Challenging the status quo anywhere is a problem. And I think that you have to, again, identify with the mission and vision of whoever it is that you're working with and incorporate your own set of values and, try to correlate them to what the company wants or the organization. There's a lot of politics involved with challenging the status quo. And I think you have to remember that your funding is at risk. And some of the challenges I came up against was not having a project at all. So I think it's definitely important to understand your boundaries and your company or organization's boundaries.
Yeah, and as for my project, I really learned that everyone in Gunnison really has that sustainability mindset of a lot of the town managers or any of the waste management people that I talk to, they want a better program. It's just kind of what is the main goal. And the hardest challenge was kind of that little collaboration across the valley. And I had a really interesting conversation with Martin Schmidt from Gunnison County actually last week, and we talked about how to implement waste management and recycling and composting, every entity in the valley has to have kind of the same goal. What do you want to do with waste? Like, is your goal to reduce emissions, or is your goal to increase diversion, or is your goal to make a profit? Kind of those means need to be outlined before any solution can be made across the board and across the valley. So there's just kind of the support is there, but just kind of what common goal does Gunnison County want to work towards is a huge implementation issue going forward for my project.
And for mine, because I worked with Katie in this project that was or a program that was already implemented, I didn't have issues in that area. But just going around and talking to individuals that have more traditional lawns compared to ones that have xeriscape lawns, I found that they tend to not want to switch. They like their yard. It's what they had growing up. It's what they're going to continue to have. I found it didn't really matter what information you gave them. They were very set in having that grass lawn. So I think finding a way to encourage people to make this switch, maybe places that don't have a lot to do with money, because that's not always going to be an option. The program is funded by grant money. So if for some reason they don't get that grant, the program's just kind of done. But the issue is still there. So I think trying to find a way that we can encourage everyone that this is important, and you can still have some grass with xeriscape, it's just not an entire yard, is probably most important, will continue to be a challenge going forward.
Yeah, I have a couple ways I'm thinking about that question. One of them is pushing against the status quo of like people have buckthorn in their yards. The project is focused on people who are aware of buckthorn and want to get rid of it. And so people who don't want to get rid of their buckthorn, this isn't really for them yet, but hopefully we can get there. Another thing, the status quo, this is my third challenge that I omitted. It's a political problem. We know how to get rid of buckthorn. It's not a technical problem. The status quo, though, is not to fund these kind of projects. And so we need funding and resources so that we can remove buckthorn from public and private land. And that's super necessary. So that is definitely challenges the status quo. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
We have a question on Zoom. Abe says, wonderful job, everyone. My question is, if you were to look 5 to 10 years in the future from the implementation of your project, what sort of solutions are you accomplished?
Do I need to repeat the question since?
I was very loud, but I don't know.
All right. Thank you, Abe. The question was looking 5 to 10 years into the future, what do you see as the impact of our projects? I guess for me, I would like to see the needle, we're going to have another tree census coming up in 7 years. I'd like to see that number falling and more robust action taken on private land around buckthorn, and really a culture of ecological stewardship on homeowners' properties as well.
I'd really just like to drive around and be able to see more xeriscape than grass lawns. Pretty easy one to see change. But yeah, not seeing so many grass lawns that are being watered at 2 o'clock in the afternoon would be great.
In 5 years from now, I'd really just like the earth to not look like the plot of Wall-E. But in all seriousness, in the Gunnison Valley, I'd really like the increased collaboration, all town managers, all ways to be really collaborative and sustainable, and just working towards one common goal in 5 years to have better waste diversion, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and greater kind of life cycle of products.
In 5 years, personally, I would like to see my waste resource action plan used at various companies. I plan on publishing it, so I want it to be a source of like guiding materials for industries who are looking to embark on the sustainability nature at whatever step that they are. And for the company, I would hope that they would increase their green initiatives and build their capacity, like I stated, in terms of forming a green team and increasing their waste diversion rates, because they have the capability.
Congratulations to this panel.